Thank you. Well, the strawberry won't kill you as long as it's organic. But it is one of the dirty dozen because most strawberries are grown and laden with pesticides, and it's the pesticides that will kill you. So I want to talk to you about living well. But to start, I want to see a raise of hands. Who knows anybody that's had a heart attack before? Raise their hand. Keep your hands up. 1 in 3 of us will suffer a heart attack in our lifetime. 1 in 5 of us will die of a heart attack. Now raise your hand if you know somebody with cancer. If you already have your hand up, raise your other hand. 1 in 2 of us will develop cancer in our lifetime. 1 in 4 of us will die of that cancer. What about diabetes? Keep your hands up. Raise your hand if you know somebody that's diabetic. Well, 1 in 3 of us will develop diabetes. Yeah, raise your feet if you need to. 1 in 3 of us will die of, or develop diabetes in our lifetime. Dementia. 1 in 5 of us will develop dementia. Look around now with everybody's hands up. Is this a state of health? We live in a society that's focused on disease, and it's not working. The World Health Organization came out with some statistics, I think it was last year, that showed that we spend more money on healthcare than any other country in the world, yet we get the worst health outcomes. We rank last in the industrialized nations and 37th worldwide, just ahead of Slovenia and Cuba in terms of health outcomes. So spending more money is not going to be the solution to our healthcare problem. You know, we have chronic diseases that are just escalating: diabetes, heart disease, cancers, autoimmune disorders, dementia. These diseases are preventable. They're largely preventable by lifestyle. We know that 4 behaviors that we can choose to adhere to predict disease-free survival: a lifetime history of non-smoking, a maintenance of a normal weight, a body mass index of under 25, exercising 30 minutes a day or more, and then finally to consume more than 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. But what do we live in? We live in a society that is overweight, nutritionally deplete, and exercise deficient. Yet we keep throwing money at healthcare to try to treat those diseases we have rather than dealing with the root cause. Why is that? Well, think about the system. There are 68,000 codes used to create medical diagnoses for billing purposes. Of those 68,000 codes, there is not one for health. We are focused in on disease. Well, why is that? Think of the revenue streams that go to providers, to hospitals, to insurance companies. It's all based upon disease. We get our revenue from diagnosing and treating disease. We don't get revenue from teaching healthy lifestyle choices. Fortunately, the medical sciences is now showing conclusively that lifestyle can prevent disease. Dean Ornish, back in the 1990s, started the Lifestyle Project that he recently got funding for from an approval by Medicare to start to implement. Well, what was that? He looked at a program of exercise, vegetarian diet, a practice of meditation, yoga, and implementation of loving compassion into your daily lives. What was his study? Well, he studied patients with severe coronary artery disease. And when patients adhered to this lifestyle program, they were starting to show regression of their disease and resolution, or complete resolving of their symptoms. The more they adhered to the program, the more their symptoms went away, the more their disease reversed. More recently, he's now shown it to be successful in patients with prostate cancer. Not making the prostate cancer go away. They're not at that stage yet. But what they are able to show is when they look at the genes in men with prostate cancer, the genetic codes, there are certain genes that are upregulated that are present in very aggressive forms of prostate cancer. Now they're showing that these lifestyle patterns can beneficially affect those patients by turning those genes off. And potentially, we don't have the data yet, but potentially even preventing prostate cancer. Let's go another step into the medical sciences. The other thing that we know is inflammation links all chronic disease. Well, the inflammatory process is important. When we get injured, we need inflammation to cause our wounds to heal. When we're under stress, we need inflammation to protect us if we do get wounded. But if we're constantly under stress, we don't need a constantly accentuated immune response. When we eat a standard American diet, we know we cause an immune reaction in our body. Most people feel it comes from the processed foods we eat, the environmental toxins that's in our foods, as well as the animal products, the proteins and the associated fat that comes with the animals that are fed toxins. We also know sedentary behavior enhances the immune system or the inflammatory response in our body. The other thing is, more recently, and this gets to the heart of my talk, is we're finding that negative emotions, negative thoughts, negative feelings trigger immune response as well. And more recently, there's a study called epigenetics. It's the study of gene regulation. It's the light switch that turns your genes on and off. As you're sitting there, your body's turning genes on and off all the time, dependent upon what the cells need. If they're turned on appropriately, they make proteins that maintain cell health. When they're turned on inappropriately, they cause disease within those cells, which ultimately results in disease in us as individuals. So we are understanding that these marks, if you will, are present, but we also don't understand how they actually work. We just know that they're there. But one thing we do know is that our environment creates those marks. Our thoughts, emotions, feelings, our behaviors, our previous experiences in life, our nutritional deficiencies, environmental toxins, all those create marks in our genetic code that actually contribute to disease. So this led me to go on a new mission, and I wanted to pursue health because I think, as I alluded to, the approach to disease management is not going to be sustainable. So how did I get there? Well, I came across a poem one day, and this will get into my story, that had significant meaning to me. It kind of opened my eyes a little bit, and I'd like to share that with you. It's a poem about self-compassion. It's a poem about understanding that authentic voice that we all have been born with. We as children play with friends and get new friends, play out in the environment. We have very few fears. We engage, curious beings. But as we tend to age into our adult life, we acquire these experiences that create fears that ultimately impair us or paralyze some of our activities. And so when I read this poem for you, I want to invite you to close your eyes, sit upright in your chair, feet flat on the floor, hands on your lap. Before I start, I'd love to invite you to take some deep breaths with your eyes closed, in through your nose, out through your mouth. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Feel the weight of your body on that chair and the weight of your feet on the floor. I am now going to start to read this poem, and I invite you to keep your eyes closed and focus on your breathing while you listen to the words. One day, you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt that old tug at your ankles. "Mend my life," each voice cried, but you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough, a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world. Determined to do the only thing you could do. Determined to save the only life you could save. Self-compassion. That's a poem about self-compassion. So what's my story? One day you finally knew what you had to do. I grew up in the Midwest. I loved playing in the woods behind my house. I actually bonded with the natural environment, but I also participated in the usual Midwest things. I grew up on fast food, soft drinks, sports, and all those other things. enjoyed my youthfulness. Then I decided I needed to go to medical school. Why? Because I thrived in the life sciences and it seemed like the thing to do. So I went to college, went to medical school, went to residency, went to fellowship, and 15 years after I graduated high school, I finally got a job. I was a cardiologist. I could fix people, I could heal people, so I thought. You know, I'm trained as an expert to treat and diagnose heart disease. And during my course of my practice, I was noticing people keep coming in. They keep getting more medications, more procedures. I wasn't healing anybody. Then I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I saw, well, geez, you know, what's going on with you? You're feeling more tired, you have less energy, you got some irritability in your gastrointestinal system, you know, you're gained 30 pounds. And I looked at my patients the next day and God, they're going through the same thing. You know, if I can't embrace healthy lifestyle, how can I teach them? We all know that it works, but why can't we do it? So I began to explore that more deeply. That authentic voice didn't come through yet, so I started a practice of meditation. And through that process, I developed a sense of clarity of who I was. I started to hear this voice come out. Yeah, it was a voice from deep within inside. It told me that I needed to pursue health. Pursuing disease was not going to be sustainable, and it's important to treat disease, but our direction was not going to be sustainable that way. We have so much capability to teach ourselves how to be healthy, but it requires connection. It requires authenticity. But to get to health, we have to know what it is. You know, health is the balance between the mind, body, spirit. Health is connection. Connection to ourselves, connection to others, and connection to the environment. That's when a signal went off in my head. Maybe health is understanding our authenticity and how or what our role is in this life and the planet that we live on. To get there, obviously, I had to go through some hurdles. After I tried to explore this within the paradigm of the healthcare system, I found that there were so many barriers of resistance. How could I make a living teaching health? The whole payment scheme is treating disease. There is no diagnosis for health. So how can I make a living doing that? Why would I give up a career in cardiology, a noble profession that pays extraordinarily well? But you know what? I had this voice, and this voice told me, you need a change. How many times do we hear those voices, those aha moments, and we decide, it's just a mind game, and we close the door? This time I decided not to. In September of this past year, I left my position with my cardiology practice to pursue this destiny, which I have no idea where it's heading. The vision is that I will help inspire people to find health for themselves while contributing to the health of the planet. Pretty vague. But to get there, I had to overcome a lot of obstacles, as I alluded to. First, there was my fears. You know, we are imperfect beings. We have vulnerabilities, but we need to recognize that those fears that we have are just thoughts. They don't harm us. They're mind games. If we embrace our fears as opportunity, saying, hey, wait a minute, the ego's telling me that I should be fearful because it doesn't like change, but maybe there's something on the other side of that door that I should pursue. That's where the authentic voice comes into play and helps nourishing you through that change. So I was able to put down my fears and pursue this new path. So where does it go from here? To do more good? That's a good question. And, you know, we talked a little bit about nutrition at the introduction. Well, one of the things I recognized is behavior is related to a couple of different things. But behavior change is clearly related to the difference, the gap between motivation and resistance. You know, we live in a consumer-based society that is driven by gratification. You know, it's that quick fix. You know, all the things in our life, the foods that we eat, the gadgets we get, the toys that we have, stimulate the brain in a way that, you know, really excites you. And then that sense of gratification wanes over time, and you need to re-stimulate. It's no different than the same effect that people who consume heroin, for instance. Actually, when you look at the pathways in the brain, our addiction to sweet, salt, fat, multitasking gadgets function in the same areas of our brain as heroin. It's a dopaminergic surge that we get with that hit, if you will. The end result is we need more and more of it. So we need to figure out why we're engaging in these behaviors. And so that's where I think discovering your authentic voice with whatever mechanism you use is so important. Secondarily, it allows you to define your purpose. And one of the things I became extremely attracted to is the idea that we are only as healthy as our environment. And to do more good, we need to protect that environment. I was not trained in nutrition in medical school, but I became obsessed with it and the ideas that we're fed about what is healthy for us and what is not. When we look at nutrition in America, 60% of our food sources come from processed foods. 30% come from livestock, 5% from fruits and vegetables, and 5% from grains. We know that animal meat, animal products, dairy, contribute to cancer, allergies, and inflammation. Milk doesn't cause strong bones. Milk causes weak bones. It contributes to osteoporosis. The process of raising livestock is now consuming 70% of our arable land, which we could be using for crops for human consumption, and 70% of our non-polluted water, which we need to drink to survive, is now being used to raise and feed livestock. 18% of the global greenhouse gas effect come from livestock. That's more than all transportation. It takes 10 times more energy to produce a pound of animal protein compared to plant protein. The net result, deforestation, land degradation, depletion of fossil fuels, and chronic disease. Yet we also know, thanks to many researchers like T. Colin Campbell, who's done the China study, and many others, that plant-based nutrition reverses inflammation, it protects us against cancer, it gives us all the nutrients that our body needs to optimally function. And it's sustainable. Why would we use 70% of our agricultural land to raise cattle to provide a substance for us to consume that has no nutrient value? Just food for thought, if you will. But that's where doing more good comes into play. If it wasn't for my idea to pursue health, then I might not recognize the value of how diet interacts not only with our own health, but perhaps the health of the environment. So it's about balance. You know, our health is equally as important to the health of the environment. There are so many inspirational talks today, and I don't have a knockout statement for you, but what I am going to leave you with is the thought of what if you truly let yourself pursue your authentic voice to create a vision, to go beyond your own needs, to create and contribute to the greater good. Contentment comes from that source, not gratification. Contentment. Thank you.